So have you ever had that moment where someone walks up to you and they're like, oh my gosh, you are looking great. And instead of being like, oh, thank you, you go, oh no, they're going to ask the next question, which is,
what are you doing? And now you have to explain somehow that you're carnivore without them thinking that you're an idiot.
it sounds crazy.
It sounds crazy, and it even still sounds crazy after doing this for 2.5 years. So this is a video about how to deal with that, or how we deal with it.
Yes. And hopefully you get some ideas. And if you have ideas, pop them in the comments as well.
Oh, yeah.
So
We'd love to hear it.
I am JJ. I am a life coach and I eat mostly meat.
I'm Eric. I'm a novelist, and I eat meat and microbes.
Yes. And we've been doing this, like you said, about 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So carnivore, like we said, can sound a little crazy. It sounds extreme. It sounds very limiting. And most people who are on the carnivore diet don't actually find it limiting or extreme at all.
No, and that's because of some of the changes to appetite and satiety that happen after you've been carnivore for a while. But I think that because the word carnivore makes you think of lions and wolves and tigers,
Yeah.
there's something kind of aggressive about it
Yeah.
that might take some people aback, especially if, they're not really strong meat eaters.
One of our daughter's friends knew we were carnivore and asked our daughter about that. And she's like, I swear they're not one of those TikTok carnivores who are eating drinking blood and eating raw meat.
I didn't know those TikTokers existed.
I didn't either, but apparently the youth knows. So
Yeah, I'm not into that.
No. So again, it just brings up a lot of different perceptions in one's mind about what is it this aggressive thing? Are you eating raw meat? Do you have to drink the blood? What the heck is carnivore?
I have not yet drunk blood, and I don't plan to.
No.
Although the Maasai do, right?
Yeah.
But it's more typical than, depending on the context, to say low carb
Yes.
or whole foods, animal based.
Actually, when I started doing this, that's what I did. I went like this. Oh yes, I eat a whole foods meat-based diet. And no one, I don't think, caught the meat-based actually. And obviously I did that on purpose.
But there's something about when you say low carb, there's am I being honest? But it's actually technically true.
It is true.
Even if all you eat is steak, if you were lion diet, you are still low carb, not no carb, technically.
Now, wait a minute. There are a lot of people who say they're zero carb and no carb.
That's because they're not eating any foods that are obviously carborific. But let's just back up and think about what is meat.
Okay.
It is muscle tissue of the animal. And how does that animal move about? How does it run? Well, sometimes it has to tap into glycogen stores in the muscle tissue, just like we have for doing sudden strong movements. Even if we're carnivore, our liver produces the glucose to put into the muscle as glycogen. And it's no different in a cow or a lamb or a goat or a chicken or a fish.
Excellent point.
And so there is a small amount of carbohydrate in meat. And so you can technically say you are low carb if all you ate was ribeyes.
And certainly it is a whole food or a one ingredient food.
Yep.
Those are other ways to talk about it that are generally more acceptable and don't have that negative connotation that some people have with the word carnivore. Yeah.
So another way to approach it, once you've been carnivore and contended with this problem a few times, is kind of having a response ready for different situations, different kinds of people.
Okay.
So there's the sort of stranger / distant acquaintance who is maybe you're interacting with them and it's not really about food, not diet. They don't really remember what you used to look like. So maybe they're not aware of the transformation you've undergone. But for some reason in the context, maybe you're eating at the same place, they're noticing that you're not partaking of the rolls and the rice.
You might even say, hold the salad.
Yeah, you might say that. And they're like, oh, are you keto? And the answer is could be yes.
Yeah.
But it also, I mean, certain not quite as high fat carnivores aren't really that keto. So there's a situation where the topic might come up. And now, is this a point and is it appropriate context where you just want to throw a grenade called carnivore into what is not really a very big relationship or a strong one? Or do you?
Well, again, I guess it depends. Are you ready for it? But one way you can do it, and if you don't want to throw that big bomb into the whole dinner table there, you can say something like, I eat very simply mostly meat-based products or mostly animal-based products.
Yeah, you could say that. And honestly, I don't know. It depends on your social jujitsu, like how social and engaging, how much rapport do you tend to make rapidly? Because if it's someone who needs to go carnivore.
Oh yeah, there's that.
There's probably ways to bring it up without it being, I do carnivore and you should too. And maybe one of those is, don't tell anybody, but I've been eating like no carbs at all, carnivore, and it has been amazing. To bring them in to the conspiracy rather than assault them with, man, you need to go carnivore. Because that's not going to go anywhere, right?
No, not at all. Now, I know that would not work, though, for people who are closer to me. I know it hasn't worked.
So friends and acquaintances who know you.
Yes. People who've known me a long time, and especially family who have known me since I was, walking around in diapers. I think Dr. Barry even talks about people who've changed your diapers.
You can't really teach them necessarily.
No, they're not really open to that.
Yeah.
So maybe at that point, there's more of a focus on the results.
Yeah, and you're probably not going to come up a whole lot unless they're noticing the results, because they're the ones who are likely to go, holy cow, JJ, what have you been doing?
They are.
And then you have to have an answer for that. And it depends on how big of a lift of a conversation you want, I guess.
Well, that's true in all these instances. Yeah. But at some point with those people closer, you kind of do have to come out of the carnivore closet, so to speak. So you might have to say that, yes, I eat very low carb, mostly meat, however you want to put that, whole food, mostly meat. And again, it just makes me feel wonderful. I feel like I've got great energy. They can't dispute that. They can dispute and might debate you on what they believe to be as the healthy diet, et cetera. And some of my family members do, but they can't dispute how you feel and how you look. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's a problem for them. But obviously the usual objections about saturated fat, cholesterol, and fiber will all come up the course of that conversation. Now, some might be more accusatory or declarations saying you're not getting fiber, too much fat, too high cholesterol, you're going to kill yourself. But others, they may surprise you and kind of be open-minded enough to ask, well, what about those topics?
Yes.
Which is a totally different mood and tone that doesn't make it a conflict, but really just kind of trying to understand your insanity. And if you have a reasoned response to like, you know what, actually, many of my blood markers have improved. Like you should see how my HDL has moved. You should see how my triglycerides have come down. I wish I could say that. My HDL has done it though.
You're trending.
I'm trending in the right place. And then you can start talking about, well, did you know that there's big LDLs and little LDLs, and it's the little ones that are the real problem? And people who eat this way tend to have very, very few of the bad little ones. That's something to say.
Yeah. I think you still want to keep the message kind of simple though.
Only if they're asking you about cholesterol. Yeah.
Right. Because I know when I first came out of the carnivore closet to my family, extended family, I had one family member be like, really? No vegetables? And it wasn't accusatory, but I didn't know what to say. I was like, well, they, veggies contain anti-nutrients and they can be bad for I just didn't have an answer. And it's certainly, I was going down the complicated, non-simple approach, which is not great.
It is difficult when you start to get into the weeds because then you start making assertions about
Yes.
the truth of nutrition. And that's tough because everybody thinks they know some truths about nutrition.
Yeah.
And unless you're going to start pulling up all of the studies and then explain in detail with an iPad, like this is an epidemiological study. Did you know it's based on surveys where they're just having to recollect what they ate and they're counting cheeseburgers as saturated? Yeah, exactly. It's almost impossible to break through with that conversation. So it's much better to bring it back to how you feel and they can judge if you look better or not.
And maybe your lab results, like you said, if it goes that far.
Now, there is another audience that we have to deal with.
Yes.
And that is the doctor.
Can I say something though?
You should.
So my doctor, my general practitioner, not my more integrative one, she was really on me when I first started seeing her a few years ago, pre-carnivore. And she did not like what I was doing with my hormone replacement. And she just had a lot of opinions about things. And then when I came in the following year and had lost 20 pounds or whatever it had been at that point, she saw me and she did not ask me a lot of questions. And she was not aggressive, assertive, because I think she saw that I looked very healthy and vibrant. So it was sort of the don't ask, don't tell type appointment. It was totally different. It was kind of interesting. So you might find as you get healthier, you may not even have to have these conversations. Yeah. But if you do, what are some thoughts about that?
Well, if your doctor, if you suspect the doc's not going to be very responsive to carnivore,
yeah,
I would just punt and go back to the low carb whole foods.
Yeah. And
just leave it at that. You could even say, switch to kind of a very paleo diet. And it's been working great.
Very paleo.
Yeah, you don't have to. Very, very paleo.
Oh, so very paleo.
But if it's someone you've had a relationship with a long time and they've been following your chronic conditions and they're seeing them reverse because they have evidence that your A1C is down and your insulin is down and you don't need insulin or whatever it is. You don't need your blood pressure meds anymore. And then they're going to be like, well, whatever you're doing is working. And you could say, well, you know what? I just don't eat things that are carby. And I eat a lot of meat and it seems to be doing good. The only thing you're going to get a hiccup on is if you're one of those people who gets a high LDL. And in that case, you can just say, you know what? Thank you. I appreciate your concern, but I just don't want to roll the dice on the side effects.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because their view is you're rolling the dice on heart disease, but you can just co-opt the whole roll the dice and turn it on side effects.
Yeah. I just thought of another phrase that's a really good one that I have used on occasion, which is low inflammatory.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Whole foods, low inflammatory diet would be another.
And if your HSCRP is low, they'll believe you.
So basically, there are some bullet points from what we've been saying.
Yeah.
Number one, evaluate whether you want to drop this bomb of the word carnivore into the conversation. You may not at all. And so we've given you some options. Number two, you want to be simple. Your explanation, simple, really, really focused on you. Anything else?
Well, if you start really explaining in the details to someone who's not interested, you're not going to persuade them, but you're also going to just kind of turn them off.
Yeah.
And they're going to be like, well, I don't need a lecture about diet. Plus, if they need the carnivore diet and they've seen your results and now you're lecturing them about it, there's going to be some defensiveness or resentment or even feeling kind of bad because they'll feel like, oh, I don't think I could actually do that.
Yeah.
Because remember where we were before carnivore and we were contemplating going there. It's not necessarily an easy lever to pull, just working up to making the switch. Mm-hmm. So it's hard for someone who hasn't done it to imagine what it's like.
Yeah. You know, I've been in the theater world and dance for many, many years. And we have the saying of leave them wanting more.
Yeah.
Leave them wanting more. And I think that's really a lot of what we want to do is don't give too much, leave them wanting more.
Now, JJ, what about the person in our audience who likes to argue? Should they just go in and go for it?
Well, again, I think that would turn people off of carnivore.
What if you don't care?
What if you don't care what?
Yeah. What if you don't care if they're turned off or they're mad or they're upset? Do you just like, I am an advocate because I know it's going to save their life. They don't have time to waste. They need to know this and they need to make a change. And I'm going to stand there and look at them until they eat a steak.
It just doesn't work. I don't know. It just doesn't work. No, that is, I'm also a coach, and that is not unsolicited advice is not well taken, generally speaking, at all.
I know that as a recipient of it my entire life, I've never once liked it.
No. It's much better to just pique people's curiosity and let them come to you.
However,
What?
seeds do get planted.
Well, that's true.
And they've been planted in me, not by lectures, obviously. But if there's ways that we can sow the seeds, which is a bad metaphor for carnivore, what would it be? Inseminate the cow? That just sounds like we need consent for that. Butcher the pig? Skin the cat? There's no good metaphor. But anyway, implant the brain worm.
That sounds awful too.
That's not something you want. You don't want to do that. To sow the seed, because we're going to have to accept that.
We'll just do that. Yeah.
That will take root someday when, for instance, when I hit that, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
I've got to try something. And I did it. But I needed to know that it existed prior to that. And so hearing Dr. Baker and then watching Dr. Barry and Carrie and Frigno Freedom, all of these things kind of fed in and gave me enough confidence to say, you know what? I think maybe that's the step I need to take. And if you can be one of those sources that is like, sometimes people need to hear it 3 times or 7 times, you can be one of those 7 times. You could contribute to eventually helping someone save their own life. So we actually covered a way, preparing ways to talk about carnivore in another video called the MEAT method.
Yes, we did.
Which MEAT is a mnemonic
Acronym.
To help you remember the things to say.
And it really keeps you focused on those results,
Yeah.
like we had talked about.
So highly recommend you watch it. We're going to link it up here. And we encourage you to go out there, stay carnivore, stay every day stronger.
Every day more blessed.